All right, nobody really cares. If you think about it, I mean, you're going to get people to think that they care. They're going to be very good empathetic listeners, and they're going to sit there and they're going to stare you in the eyes. They're going to nod their head. They're going to touch you on the shoulder, and they're going to go, oh, it's going to be okay. But really, if you're a chronic complainer, nobody cares. I mean, people get feeling overwhelmed by negativity when they hear complainers. Even complainers are negative, and they don't even realize it. So if you want to improve your relationships, you want to get that feeling of negativity, that overwhelming negativity out of your system, or you just want to enhance your well-being and mental health, this episode's for you. Welcome to Life Unscripted, the podcast that just sucker punches you in the face with the hard truth that life has no script and everything you've been taught is an illusion. I'm your host, Alan Stafford. Join me as we dive into one of my biggest pet peeves, and I guarantee yours too, whether you're guilty or not. Complaining. I think you're going to relate well to this story that I'm going to tell you. It's about old people. And I'm not even sure if that's a politically correct term nowadays. Do they have a pronoun? I mean, the aged, the beautifully younger, older crowd. I mean, I don't know, but I just call them the elderly or the old people. So they like to bitch. They like to nag. I mean, if you don't know, I mean, I can't say that all of them do, but you know, you've seen them. They complain about everything. I mean, they complain about the price of fuel. Wait, I do that too. Does that make me old? They complain about food. They complain about politics. They complain about the kids, the sound, the birds, the sky, the rain, whatever it is that comes across their mind, they complain about it. And you know who I'm talking about. It could be you yourself. That's an elderly or blissfully youthful old person. So growing up, my grandmother on my mom's side complained about everything and everyone. Every other word was a complaint. So that probably explains why my grandfather was always so quiet, sitting on the couch. I mean, he feared he would end up on her list of complaints. And you know what? He did, because she would always complain he doesn't say anything. So you can't win for losing when you're dealing with a complainer. And that's the point of my story. Everybody complains. Some people complain more. They're chronic complainers, and nobody wants to hear you. They really don't. But we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about not all complaining is bad if it's done constructively. As a matter of fact, you know, some statistics are out there that the average person complains 15 to 30 times per day. 15 to 30 times per day. Imagine that. Can you imagine what a chronic complainer does? Everything they say. I know a chronic complainer. Seriously, I know one. There's never anything positive out of this person's mouth. It's always complaining, whether it be the drivers on the road, whether it be family members, whether it be work. Work is the worst that they complain about. But there's a complainer I know. It's just like, but their entire life. If you look at their life, if you look at them, it's reflective of how they complain. It's very negative. It's very dismal. It's sadness. You know. And statistically, complaining for 30 minutes could physically damage your brain. No, it really could. This is not a joke. I mean, I know I joke a lot, but this is not a joke. It can damage your brain. What it does is it rewires your brain. Neuroplasticity rewires your brain when you're constantly in that state of negativity, and that's what complaining is. There's nothing positive out of complaining. And as a matter of fact, when you're driving with someone, listen to them. Don't say a word. Just listen to whoever you're with. Not even if you're driving, if you're at home or if you're at work, count how many times they complain. You'll be overwhelmed. You'll be surprised to see how many times a person complains. And it could be something as, that's too hot, which is pretty common. Or it could be, that's too cold. Or why is she wearing that? Or look at his hair. These are all complaints. And when you're stuck in that rut constantly, it rewires your brain. I know we think we feel better by complaining, but it's actually doing more damage to us. Not only to the brain, but to our body. Look, our brains don't want to work harder than it absolutely has to. And we can tell by a lot of people out there that they don't want to work hard with their brains at all. They're actually brains that probably don't even work at, period. Just take a look at politics. But we're not going to get into politics on this episode. So by complaining, here's what happens. And this is according to a 1996 Stanford study. We've already talked about the 30 minutes and the 30 times a day, but 30 minutes or longer can physically damage the brain, as I said. Complaining can cause the hippocampus, it's a part of the brain, to shrink. And that's the part of the brain that's responsible for learning. It's also responsible for emotions and forming new memories. Think about that, folks. 30 minutes or longer of constant complaining can physically damage your brain. It can rewire it. Now, I know some of you are thinking, well, I don't feel drunk or I don't feel like I got brain damage. Well, if you keep complaining, that's a good sign that you are rewiring your brain. And here's the kicker. The more you complain can cause you to rewire your brain to complain more in the future. So let me say this another way. If you're complaining constantly, that complaining leads to more complaining in the future because you're rewiring your brain to complain. Sounds like the beginning of a rap song. Rewire the brain to complain. And here's another thing about complaining. As I complain about complaining can also cause people to become negativity addicts. So you've heard of sugar addicts, drug addicts, alcoholics. Well, I'm introducing you to the negativity addict. And yes, there's such a thing, which leads to basically black and white thinking, and that's it. There's no gray area. There's no rational. There's no critical thinking. There's no looking at possibility. It's one way or the other. And I'm going to tell you right now, I know you know people like that. They're in your family. They're your friends or your coworkers. They're the guy at the gas station or at the line at the supermarket complaining about something, and it's black and white. You've seen them. You've been exposed to them, and don't deny it. We now understand, as I've been saying this, that complaining rewires the brain if you do it for 30 minutes or more. I don't know. I don't think there's a timer in your head that says, oh, he's hit 30 minutes. Now we're going to start damaging his brain. I think it's just a general rule. Okay, so don't hold me to that 30 minutes and all of a sudden, I can complain for 29 minutes and I'm going to be fine the rest of the day. No, that's not how it works. And I'm sure some people's brains are affected more quickly than not. But here's something else that complaining does. It doesn't just damage your brain. It impacts your body, your health. When we complain, the hormone cortisol is released into our body. This is also responsible for our fight or flight response. When our fight or flight response is activated, our brain redirects that blood, oxygen, and energy away from our non-essential systems. Repeated complaining results in cortisol being released at higher levels. And you know what that does to us? That puts us at more risk of developing heart disease, high cholesterol, diabetes, obesity, and strokes. And no, I'm not saying every fat person out there is a complainer, but then again, you never know. They might be complainers because they're obese. But it does lead to more damaging health issues, such as, like I said, high cholesterol, diabetes, and stroke alongside of obesity. One study published in the Archives of General Psychiatry found that, on average, optimists tend to live longer than pessimists. Pessimist is somebody negative who always thinks negative or talks negatively, just in case you didn't know. Optimists were found to have a 55% lower risk of death across all causes and were 23% less likely to die of heart disease. So look at folks, if you cut out red meat, if you eat like a vegan and you don't complain, you're going to live forever. Well, I don't know about that. But if you reduce the complaining, the chronic complaining, then you can improve your health. And we're going to talk about good constructive complaining too and how that makes social change or changes in the workplace. So not all complaining is equal and not all complaining is bad. Just chronic complaining constantly. So folks, I guess to sum up the studies here, basically it's kind of telling you your constant bitching is killing you. And you thought fast food or red meat was going to get you. It's your damn thoughts, guys. It's just your thoughts. Stop thinking negatively and stop complaining too. So another impact of complaining, and I want you to take a moment. If you're a complainer, I'm not going to call you out. You're going to know that you're a complainer. And some people who say, I don't complain at all, but you do, okay? But if you're a complainer, aside from the alleged brain damage that constant chronic complaining does and the health impact it can have on you over time, complaining has another impact, which is not a direct health impact, but it's a social and reputational impact. Constant complainers create social isolation. Think about that for a second. If you're not a complainer and you know a complainer, how often are you gravitated towards that complainer? Do you say, hey, I really want to hang out with you because I love hearing you complain about stuff? Now, don't get me wrong. There are some people who love a good gossip. But in general, you don't want to be around a complainer any more than the complainer. Well, I wasn't going anywhere with that. But you don't want to be around a complainer at all because it's insanity, pure insanity. So the question comes into play, how do we transform our complaining into something more positive? All right, so as I mentioned earlier in the segment or earlier in the podcast, that not all complaining is bad. I mean, there's actually some good that comes about complaining. Like Steve Jobs, he was the former CEO who passed away of Apple. He complained. He was a perfectionist, but his complaining about imperfect products in his mind led to great innovations, led to the iPod, led to the iPhone, led to the iPad. So not all complaining is bad in that case. Also, if you take a look at it, it can bring about social change. I mean, good constructive complaining like Greta Thunberg, I think it's Greta Thunberg, the young activist, environmental activist constantly complaining about the humans' impact on the environment. That brings about good social change. It doesn't necessarily translate. Now, some people are going to think, oh, she needs to stop complaining. She's just a little kid, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is, it doesn't matter. Any activist out there complaining, if they're doing it constructively, brings about social change. And even in the workplace, if you take a look at the workplace, employees who complain, for example, they don't have a good lunchroom, enough complaining will bring about a change within the organization. If the organization values their employees, they'll create a lunchroom, or they'll create a policy to have free lunch once a month, or whatever the case might be. And I know you probably have been in that situation where people at work have complained about something and have made a change. So all that complaining is fine. That's good constructive complaining. It's not chronic. It's not ongoing unless they're trying to make a change. But the chronic complaining is the part that's doing the damage to humanity itself, to people itself. So then we come up to the question about how do we transform our complaining? I mean, can we stop cold turkey? Is it like stop smoking, stop drinking, stopping drugs? I don't even think you can just stop those cold turkey. You got to have some assistance, right? So let's go through some of the steps on how we can help you become less complaining. And don't worry, folks, if you're not the complainer, I'm going to give you some tips on how you can help people who are complainers in your life. That'll be coming up later on. So first and foremost, here's the thing. You have to recognize that you're a complainer. Self-awareness. Not everybody has self-awareness. I guarantee you. Go ask. I bet you know somebody right now that if you said, hey, you're a chronic complainer, they're going to go, oh, no, I'm not a chronic complainer. You're the chronic complainer. I don't complain at all. You're the one always complaining. Yeah. So you're going to come across people like that. But here's the thing. If you're the complainer, recognize that you're the complainer. Recognize that you have this problem. You can read people's body language. You can tell if they're interested, and most of the time they're probably not. You can tell if you're constantly complaining because it's not positive coming out of your mouth. You might think it's positive, but it's not. So you want to identify triggers. Pay attention to the situation people are feeling that trigger your complaints. What is it? Is it work? Is it road rage? Look, I'm going to be the first to tell you. Well, I might be the first to tell you. There might be family members of mine that be the first to tell you, but I had chronic road rage when I was younger. Chronic, man. I was just like out of control. Then I realized the impact it was having on those in my vehicle, especially my daughter. So I began to slip away from that, change my thinking. Now I'm at a point to where, yeah, it's going to slip out on occasion, but for the most part, I don't even let it bother me anymore. So I had enough self-awareness, and I knew that the trigger was somebody doing something dumb in front of me in a vehicle, at least what I perceived to be dumb. It may not have been dumb to them. It may have been completely an innocent mistake, but I took it differently because of my mindset. But I identified that trigger, and I began to change that trigger, so now it doesn't have an impact on me. So the first thing is you want to identify those triggers. If it's something someone says at home or someone does at home or at work, begin to take note of that. If you have to journal it, write it down. There's nothing wrong with keeping a little journal, putting a little caption, triggers. Well, you might want to preface it so if somebody doesn't pick up the book, they think, oh, this is a hit list. They got triggers on me. No, you want to identify your triggers and what's causing you to start that complaining process. Could it be just a familiar face? You might just see your loved one at home and go, "Oh, good, they're home. I have someone to complain to." Well, it's not good for them. I'm telling you that right now. They don't like it. They're not going to tell you that sometimes, but they just don't like it and they don't want to hear it, and it does have an impact on them as well as you. So once you've identified the triggers, reflect on the frequency. We talked about having a journal. If you keep a journal and you write your triggers and you note it every time you do it, chances are you're going to see a pattern. Maybe you complain in the morning. Maybe you complain at night. Maybe you complain day and night. Maybe you complain when someone looks at you a certain way. You're going to find that frequency. You're going to find what's triggering you, and then you can begin to make the change. Again, this all goes back to self-awareness. First, you have to recognize that you complain. There's no point in doing anything if you don't recognize it. In this last one here, not this last one. And this one here is probably a big one. Understand the impact. Consider how your complaints affect your mood and those around you. And that's the one thing that made me change. I'm a firm believer that if I have loved ones near me, it's not my job to get them riled up. It's my job to protect them, not just physically, but emotionally as well. And that to me is what love is. You protect them emotionally. By complaining, you're not doing that. You're deteriorating. You're chopping at a tree little by little until that tree falls, and then that's your relationship. So what you don't want to do is complain in front of people that are your loved ones. It's okay on occasion if you're having a bad day. I'm not saying completely knock out complaining. I'm saying if you're a chronic complainer, you're going to need to tone that back, take into consideration those people around you. Now, hey, if you're at a party and you don't want to talk to somebody, start complaining. They'll probably leave. That'll be a great way to get rid of them. I may even have to try that one. And here's the biggest thing about complainers. Complainers are not solution seekers. And so by going through this exercise with you and by discussing complaining and how to remove the complaining or how to transform your complaining into something more positive, you want to be a solution seeker. Focus on what you can control. Can you control the guy's expression that triggers your complaining? Can you control your boss? Can you control the guy in the car in front of you who made a right-hand turn and wasn't even aware of you because they probably got something else going on in their life and it triggered you? You can't control any of that. So first of all, what you want to do is focus on what you can control instead of dwelling on the problem. Direct your energy towards what you can change or influence. You can change your attitude. You can change your attitude completely. You're in total control of that, your attitude. So start with that. Rather than worrying about someone else's behavior, put your behavior in check. And taking this proactive stance can reduce the feelings of helplessness and frustration within you. Folks, it's all about you right now, helping you overcome the complaining, helping you improve your mental state, your health, and of course, let's not have brain damage with this. Next, what you want to do is adopt a solution-oriented mindset, folks. Train your mind to think of potential solutions or I got tongue twisted. I was so excited to get this information out to you. Train your mind to think of potential solutions or alternatives as soon as you recognize the complaint forming in your mind. It's like a cloud, a storm brewing. You see the clouds starting to come. What are you going to do? You're going to run inside. You're going to get your umbrella or get a jacket. The same thing applies to complaining. Begin to recognize, and that's if you start journaling and identifying your triggers. You'll begin to recognize when your complaint begins to form, and then you start and go, oh, wait a second. How can I solve this? I'm telling you, I used to complain a lot, folks. This is why it's one of my biggest pet peeves now. And I learned to train my mind to say, rather than complaining, how can I solve this? What can I do that's in my control that can take charge and solve the problem? And if there's nothing I can do physically, mentally, I can step back and go, I can't solve this. But there's no point in complaining because that's not going to help. That's not going to do anything. It's not even going to make me feel better because in the long run, it's going to hurt my health. So you got to be in that same mindset. And then you want to involve others in problem solving. So if the issue affects more than just you, engage others in brainstorming solutions, and it's okay. Here's the scenario. You come in, you're complaining about your job, and you realize, I'm complaining about my job again, or I'm complaining about my health again. How can I solve this? Well, I can't really change my boss. I can have a conversation with my boss, or I can find another job. As far as health-wise, you can say, well, I'm overweight. what do? I can get up and go to the gym. Oh, I don't want to get up and go to the gym. Well, then that's not a solution. Or you can say, I don't want to eat, you see the candy bar, reach for the candy bar, you have a moment of weakness and stop and go, no, I don't want to eat the candy bar. Grab a piece of fruit, grab a piece of vegetable. You're not going to like it at first if you don't eat it, but it's an acquired taste, folks. These are solutions to your problems, to your complaining. And when you involve others in your problem solving, when you're asking and seeking solutions with their help, because you may not have the answers. I don't expect you to have all the answers. I mean, you may not know how to lose weight. You may not know how to find another job. This might be a job you've had for 20 years. Then it's okay to seek the advice of others who've probably been there or know how to do these things. It helps build bridges and also helps with creative problem solving. And it helps train you to see things a different way from another person's perspective. Alrighty, when we come back, I'm going to be talking about how you can express your needs constructively, okay? So we've come this far and we talked about, rather than complaining, finding solutions, but I'm going to help you go to the next step by how you can express your need constructively without complaining when we come back. All right, welcome back. I forgot where we were. No, I'm just kidding. I know where I'm at. So express your needs constructively. So we've talked about the damage complaining does so far. We've talked about what you should do or some strategies for you to employ when you realize you're the complainer and you want to change. You want to make that transformation from complainer to solution seeker, okay? Now, let's talk about how you can express yourself in the process. Because if you don't know how to express yourself, you're still going to complain, and you're not solving the problem. I mean, you might complain once or twice, but, most people will keep complaining, and they're not solving the problem. So part of that transformation is to solution seeker from complainer is to better understand how to express yourself. So the first thing is, and I know you've heard this before, use I statements. Because when you use you statements, you're becoming accusatory of someone else, and that's not going to set well with them, and that's not even going to lead to any sort of bridge building or resolution. That's going to lead to probably another argument. So as I said, use I statements, okay? This communicates your feelings and needs without blaming others, as we just mentioned. So for example, you want to say, I feel frustrated when blah, 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 instead of saying, you always make me feel, because again, remember what I said earlier? That is a primer for an argument, because what you're doing now is you're throwing that onto the other person, and they're going to be defensive, like, oh, no, wait a second, that's not my problem, buddy. You also want to be specific and clear. You want to clearly articulate what is bothering you. And I know some people have a hard time with expressing themselves, but you're going to have to rise above it. You're going to have to rise above it and just express yourself, because really, if you do it in a very constructive, positive manner, people are going to be very receptive of that. So what you want to do is clearly articulate what is bothering you and what change you'd like to see. Don't be vague. Don't be like kicking dust around with your head down. Well, I kind of like, wish, being whimsical about it. Just come out and say, look, I feel frustrated when you don't listen to me when I'm speaking to you about a matter that I find important. Most people will be receptive to that type of conversation. If they're not, they're probably not the person you want to be dealing with. They're not probably a very rational person, even though we're not really rational beings, but we've learned to become rational. So if you're talking to someone and they're not receptive to you, if you approach them that way, then there's probably another issue. And then you're still going to have to dig deeper to find that solution first before you come back to what's bothering you. But that's a whole different podcast. And then you want to choose the right time and place, folks. Look, if there's a problem and you're at a family dinner, don't start up with your emotion. Don't have an amygdala hijack, where your amygdala, the emotional part of your brain, just hijacks you and starts spewing hatred or all these complaints and gripes about the person. That's not the time or place. It really isn't. Because what it does is it brings everybody's mood down in a time where people want to be uplifted, okay? So choose the right time and place to address your concerns. So this might have to wait. So you might have to learn a little bit of patience. So let's go to a scenario. Let's say you're at a dinner party with your family and friends, and all of a sudden, Aunt Betty is there. Aunt Betty's everywhere, but Aunt Betty's at this party, and Aunt Betty says something that triggers you, and then you're going to start complaining about it. Because maybe she does something and you don't like it, so you start complaining, And then you want to address her. Well, that's not the place to address her right there in front of everybody, because what you're going to do is you're going to incite her to continue to argue and complain to you, and then the complaining is going to go back and forth. So what you want to do, you could ask her nicely if you can come to another room where we can have a private conversation, if you want to address it there, or you can address it after the party, whatever you feel comfortable with, but at least find the right time to do it. Don't say, hey, Aunt Betty, you're eating your dinner right now. Let's get your butt up and let's go upstairs and talk about this, because that's not what I'm talking about for the right time and place, okay? So you see, folks, there's solutions to complaining, and they're very practical solutions, and it takes time. It's not going to happen overnight. I promise you it's not going to happen overnight. It didn't happen overnight for me. It took me quite a while, we'll say, months, sometimes even years, depending on what I complained about. But really, in the end, it does transform your life if you are proactive and cognizant and have that self-awareness, which all that meant the same thing. You understand that? I mean, I hope you do, and I think you do, because if you didn't, you wouldn't be listening this far into my podcast. When we come back, we're going to turn the tables. We're going to assume that you are not the chronic complainer, but that somebody else in your life is the chronic complainer, and you want to help them. You're coming from a place of love and compassion, and you want to help them to better themselves, to save their brain from being damaged, to help their health, and just make them a general, well-rounded, positive person. We'll talk about that when we come back. Okay, we're back, and the topic for this segment is, if you're not the complainer, how do you encourage others not to complain? Well, my solution is run fast, get out of there. No, you don't want to do that. Although sometimes I do. I just want to get out of there. I don't want to hear you complain. I'm now at a point where I don't want to hear people complain. I just don't want to hear it. I don't care. I don't care about your choice of politics. I don't care what so-and-so is doing to the country, because I can't make a change. All I can do is control myself. And while I try to help people not complain by helping them understand that there's a lot more to the story than they're telling, and that leads them to complain, they just goes in one ear and out the other ear. But we're going to talk about how you can help people who complain. If it works, great. If it doesn't, then it's probably time to move on and not have a conversation with them. So the first thing, and you've probably heard this before, and it's lead by example, folks. If you want someone to behave in a certain way, model that behavior for them. Actively show how focusing on positive aspects of situations can actually lead to better outcomes and feelings. I mean, if you're doing the positive stuff, if you're talking positively, one or two things are going to happen. Either they're going to just shut up and not say anything, or they're going to gradually become more positive. I guess a third thing could happen. They could just say, screw you, and take off. I don't want to talk to you. He doesn't listen to my complaints. I mean, that is a possibility, and people have done that. But, those aren't the people that you can spend your time with. Or those are the people you don't want to waste your time with as far as trying to help, because, they don't have that self-awareness. They'd rather just complain than anything else. And again, we're going to go back to the beginning when we talked about brain damage. Complaining begets complaining, meaning if you complain, you're going to continue to rewire your brain for more negativity, leading to more complaining. Okay, so it's like a vicious cycle that you're stuck in this loop that you're going to have to, it's like riding a bicycle and all of a sudden someone just throws like a wrench or a screwdriver into the spokes and the bike comes to a complete halt. Yeah, that's the sound of my brakes hitting on the pavement with a bike. But the bottom line is, you're going to have to break that cycle. Someone is either the person complaining or the person not complaining that's listening to the complainer. So demonstrate positivity. I mean, your behavior can serve as a powerful example for everybody around you. I mean, it can. Just watch someone. Watch someone's positive behavior. Does it make you want to run to them and complain? If it does, then we got a big problem. But no, you usually, when you see someone who's positive, you want to gravitate towards them. You want to be like them. You want to be around them. So, for example, if someone starts complaining to you, share a solution. Don't jump into it. Like if they go, oh, well, Betty's always, coughing on my food, and I really can't stand her. She's just disgusting. Then you simply might want to offer a solution. And one solution might be, hey, have you had a conversation with her? Have you tried not sitting next to her while she, eats her food and coughs all over yours? I mean, these are simple solutions, right? And they're like, oh, I didn't try that. But the bottom line is, you find a solution, share a solution with somebody that's complaining a lot. It might mean that you're going to have to do a little thinking yourself. And I know some people don't want to think. And here's a big one, and it's not easy for everybody, but reflect on your responses. What you want to do is be mindful of how you react to others' complaints. Offer sympathy or empathy. Empathy is how we, not sympathy, but, sympathy is we understand how you feel. Empathy is we feel how you feel. We know. Offer empathy and support, but also try to gently guide them toward conversations that are potential solutions and positive, and have positive aspects. Don't, again, participate in the solutions or the complaint chorus. All right, and finally, reflect on your responses. So when you're talking to someone, be mindful of how you react to their complaints. What you want to do is you don't want to be brash or angry about it or complain back. You offer some empathy and support, but also gently guide the conversation towards a potential solution, okay? Maybe towards some positive aspects. You always want to keep moving that person towards positivity and not back into the depths and darkness of negativity as they already are there. Look, wrapping this whole thing up, if you're the complainer, self-awareness is going to go a long way. Learn to recognize when you're complaining and when other people are dissatisfied or uncomfortable with you complaining. Begin to seek solutions. Look for solutions, not the problem. Don't become the problem. Become the solution seeker in that case. And if you're not the complainer and you're dealing with complainers, be empathetic, but help guide them towards a more positive environment, more positive thinking. Because in the end, I think we can bridge the gap between complainers and those who are being complained to and create a very positive environment. And then again, there are people who just don't want to stop complaining because they enjoy it. It's a release for them. And I don't know how you're going to change them other than probably distance yourself from those kinds of people because they don't want to change. And when you don't want to change, you can't make somebody change. Hey, I want to thank you. If you've stuck this far with me, this is my very first podcast. I really appreciate it. I really, really do. Thanks for listening. As I do these, they'll get better and better and better, I promise you, and you'll see a lot more of my personality pop out. So again, I appreciate you. My name's Alan Stafford, and this is Life Unfiltered.